Hello everybody, welcome to Sane Game Studios. I'm Sane, I'm an amateur game developer. Today on GameMaker Tutorials, I'm going to be talking about lighting. So lighting is an extremely complicated issue. There's a lot of different forms of lighting and a lot of different ways you can implement lighting, and you need to figure out what style of lighting suits your style of game the best. So the most basic form of lighting is just hole punching, where you just draw a black surface across your entire game and then you use sprites to punch holes in that surface so that you can see through just a black surface, and then that is your light, those holes that you create using sprites. And honestly, most lighting engines are going to work very much the same. But the one that I'm going to be showing you today, which is Bulb by Juju Adams, it does something a little bit more complicated, and that is shadowcasting. And in this video, I'm just going to be very simply showing you how to set up some basic lighting. If you are interested in using this lighting engine, I will include links to the download project as well as links to the documentation down below. And in a future tutorial, which I will probably be releasing next week, I will also show you how to do hole punch lighting, which is much simpler to do. You do not need an extension to do it. You can code it yourself rather simply, and I will be walking you through that. But for this, we're going to be using an extension, and I'm going to show you guys everything you need to know about implementing a basic Juju Adams bulb extension. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to the Juju Adams bulb download, and that will be included in the description down below. And the latest version, which is 22.0.7, was released September 25th, 2024. And to get going, all you're going to need to do is you just need to click on this right here. I've already clicked on it. I've already downloaded it, so I don't need to do that any further. But you just click on that right there. And then once that is downloaded, it is very simple. See, I have an empty project right here with just a white room, which is recommended by the documentation to just have a white room to test it out at first and see how it works. But other than that, I have no sprites, no objects, no nothing. But I'm going to go to my downloads section. I'm going to grab Bulb right there. I'm just going to drag it into GameMaker. And then it's going to ask me if I want to import the asset package. I'm going to say yes. Once you click yes, this here will pop up and it will give you all of the files that are included in the asset package. And if you know what you are doing with certain asset packages, especially ones that come with example rooms and example objects and stuff, you can go ahead and just manually select the ones that you want by just clicking the one that you want and clicking add. Since this asset package only comes with what you need as well as with a license text, which you should include in your game files, you just click add all, and then you just go down here and you click import. Now that it's imported, you will have everything that you need to initialize the bulb. The one thing that it doesn't do, however, is include the objects that you would be interacting with inside of the game. So and then if you read the documentation will walk you through on how to do that. And for the most part, I'm just going to be copying and pasting from the documentation to just get this working. So according to the documentation, the first thing I should do is I should create a new object, and I should call it Light Controller. Actually, it says to call it OBJ Light Controller, but I'm going to be altering a couple things to stick with my personal naming conventions, and there was nothing wrong with that. And then from there, I'm just going to go to the documentation. I'm going to go to the quick start guide. And I'm legitimately just going to start copying and pasting all of the code from this into my object. This one here said to put it in the create event, so that's what I did. And this one here says to put in the post draw event. So I'm going to go draw, post draw. paste. And it says to put this code in the cleanup event. So I go back here, and I'm just going to go to the cleanup event. And the cleanup event is actually very useful. It will initialize upon like the object being destroyed or the room ending and like things like this. Any point in time where the GameMaker recognizes that this object no longer needs to be storing data inside of memory, it will run the cleanup event if there is a cleanup event. Very useful to have. I put it in a lot of objects. And a lot of times like I do my own cleanup, but I always just put a cleanup event in and just put all of my cleanup in there, because like if you're going to be, deleting a DS list from memory, there's no harm in deleting it in the cleanup event as well. That's all we have to do for the object light controller. So I'm actually going to go into my room now. I'm going to create a new instances layer, and I'm going to call this lighting. And the only thing I'm going to be putting inside of the lighting layer is my light controller. Now it says we can add a light, and we create a new object called obj light. I'm not actually going to be doing that because I personally don't like that naming convention. So I'm going to be creating a new object, and I'm going to be calling it O Light Parent. And there is a reason why I'm calling it O Light Parent. But I'm going to go to the room start event. So other room start. And I'm going to copy and paste that code as well. One thing that's really important here is if you went with your own naming convention, you're going to need to change this to your naming, because it just has to reference this object. So all I'm going to do is just change that to a lowercase, change that to a lowercase, delete, underscore. Turns red, good to go. And then the only other object we need to create now is called an ocular. For my personal reference, to keep things easy for me, it's essentially what an ocular is that it is a Shadowcaster. It is the object that is used to cast shadows. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this O Shadowcaster. And then any object that I want to have as a Shadowcaster, I am going to make a child of this object. I'm going to grab this code. It says to use obj player because it is using obj player as an occluder. Ocular is what I said. Occluder. But I'm just going to be creating a wall, and that is what I'm going to be using as my Shadowcaster. You might get feather messages like this, the yellow squiggly line, and that is from Feather. And that is just saying that occluder was declared outside of the create event. And it is not a big deal to create something outside of the create event, as long as you can ensure that it is created before it is referenced in a step event. Again, I'm going to change this to fit my naming convention. So all this is doing is it is taking the collision box of whatever sprite is attached to the object that is a child of O Shadowcaster, and it is using that to cast shadows off of it. In this case, like I said, it uses the player, but I'm not going to have my player be a Shadowcaster. I'm just going to have walls be a Shadowcaster. And actually, for the sake of this tutorial, I'm not going to be having a player at all. But if you want your player to be a Shadowcaster, you can just go ahead and just make your player a child of O Shadowcaster. Oh, and if your Shadowcaster is dynamic, you're going to need to update its position. Okay, by dynamic I mean it moves. You're going to need to update its position every step. And you do that by just moving the occluder, which is what you created. This is what actually casts the shadow. And there's a few things that you can change here. You can change whether or not it's visible, the X and Y position, X scale, Y scale, and angle. So if you had one like if you had an object that rotated and you needed the shadow casting to rotate with it, you would just go occluder.angle equals image angle. And that would rotate the Shadowcaster with the object. So one thing the light actually needs is it needs a sprite. So what I do is they call it this because that's their naming convention. That's what they would actually name the sprite in the sprites folder. I'm actually going to create a variable and I'm going to call it that. I'm going to call it SPR light. So that this will be punched, the value of this variable will be punched in right there. And I'm going to make the type an asset. And then if you go to the documentation and you go up to add a light, right here it says you can grab a test sprite. So this is the test sprite. And if you want to download it, you just click this download raw file right here. I've already done that, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to go to my downloads. I'm going to grab that, and I'm just going to drop it in my game. Right here. And I'm going to call this S-Light. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one more sprite. I'm going to call this S-Wall. I'm going to make it 32 by 32. Edit image. Fill it with black. And then I'm going to make a new object. And I'm going to call it O-Wall. I'm going to give it my wall sprite. And then I'm also going to create a new object. And I'm going to call it O Test Light. And for parent, I am going to select O Light Parent. And then in variable definitions, where it says SPR Light, I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to attach my light sprite. And then I'm going to go to the step event. And I'm going to be changing a few variables with the light source. So just like with the Shadowcaster, if you look in here, you're going to have a bunch of values that you can change. And that's all of these here. So you can change the sprite, the image, which is like the image number, your X and Y scale, the angle, the color, the intensity, whether or not it casts shadows. And to do that, I'm going to say light, because light is the variable that we have stored the ID of the light object inside of. So I'm going to go light.x equals mouse underscore x. And then I'm going to go light.y equals mouse underscore y. And that's really it. So it'll follow my my mouse. Then when I go to my room, I'm going to select the instances layer, and I'm going to place some Shadowcasters. Just randomly, just so you can see it working. And then I'm also going to grab my test light object, and I'm also going to pop it in the room. So essentially we just have a bunch of Shadowcasters, our light source, and then here we have our light controller. And then if you go to your room inspector and you go creation code, not creation code, instance creation order, the light controller should always be in the top, because it is going to establish a bunch of variables within the room that the Shadowcasters and the lights need to reference. So you always want to make sure that the code creating this is ran before the code creating everything else. But with that, I'm going to run the game. As you can see, the lighting system is working pretty well, but I'm not casting shadows. And I know exactly why I'm not casting shadows. So I'm just going to quickly exit the game. I'm going to edit this object. I'm going to go parent, where it says no object. I'm just going to assign it Shadowcaster. And then I'm going to run the game again. And as you can see, my light system is working beautifully. It is casting shadows. The light looks great. And then if you want a different shape of the light, you just go ahead and just use a different shape of the sprite. I'm going to show you guys how to do one more thing. And that is change the color of the light. So if you look in here, you have this thing called blend, and it is set to C_white. And that is just going to tell it what color to draw the sprite. And if you draw a sprite white, it will draw it whatever colors you have actually in the sprite editor. So I'm going to open up this is the parents event. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to open up the same event. I'm going to say room start. And I'm going to go event inherited. And that is going to make sure that the event from the parent still runs, so it still creates the light variable. And then I'm going to say light.blend equals C_red. And then if I run the game now, you'll see that my light has changed colors to red. And you can use that to create ambiance and, have your lights look a lot more dynamic. That is the basics on how to get the bulb extension running. Like I said, I will also be following this up with the cutout lighting method, which is much simpler. And actually, if you do have a camera that you used in your game, you would punch the camera ID in here. So you would be like view, get camera, view port 0. And that would grab the camera assigned to that viewport. and then that will make sure that the lighting works properly with the camera system. That is the basics on how to get started using the bulb extension by Juju Adams. Like I said, the links to the documentation as well as links to the download page are in the description down below. I will be following this up in the future with a tutorial on how to do just a cutout method of lighting where you don't get casting shadows, and for a lot of different game types that is more than sufficient, and it is much easier performance wise. It's a lot less demanding on the processing. But if you have any questions about the basics on using bulb, I'm still getting familiarized with it. Please comment them down below. I will do my best to try to answer them. There is a Juju Adams Discord server where I do believe they have a space in which to ask questions about bulb. But as you saw, it is rather quick to implement. It is a simple extension to use and get rolling with, and it can be rather versatile depending on how deep you want to get into setting it up and the different types of variables that you want to be playing with. That's all that I got for you today. I hope you guys are having a good one. Like I said, if you have any questions, please comment them down below. Otherwise, please like and subscribe. I hope to see you guys in the future, and peace out.